No, it was Robert. When you said you accustomed being the breadwinner and then kind of things like the man that's supposed to be manly. So men don't cry and men don't experience these things. So you gotta be strong and that kind of thing, which is far from the truth. It takes more strength to go and look for help than it takes to ball up in a shell and just remain there suffering.
Welcome to Just a Conversation, the podcast where we discuss the topics that matter to you. I'm Fabian Belgrave, here with
Sheila Morel.
And today we're having a real and raw conversation about mental health, from anxiety and burnout to depression and stigma. We're diving into what it means to heal and to support one another. With us are three incredible guests, Robert Croizat, Shane Phillips, and Ryan Lewis, each bringing their unique experience and passion for mental health awareness.
Well, guys, I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. I personally believe that every person who will walk this earth will experience a mental challenge at some point in their lives, and it's nothing really to be ashamed of. I'm looking forward to hearing from each of you. But Robert, let's start with you. I believe that your mental health advocacy started from personal experience, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I'm very passionate about all aspects of mental health. But particularly mental health in the workplace, because that's kind of like my story, my history. I had quite a stressful job, and I thought I could handle it. I didn't get typical guy thing. I didn't get help when I should have got help, and things got out of hand, and I had a total burnout. I was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in the UK. Diagnosed with severe anxiety, severe depression, and it took me about 6 years to get out of it. Could have been avoided if I just dealt with it earlier, and it's just so important to get help when you need help. As Ryan and I are always saying, if you break your arm, you break your leg, you're going to get help. It's a no-brainer. But if you have something wrong with you mentally, it's exactly the same thing. You need to get help.
So, what were your signs? I mean, the body tells you something is wrong. What did you...
Yeah, so the physical signs, it started off as stress. So I wasn't sleeping. Insomnia, feeling sick, bad stomach, dreading going into work, feeling too under pressure, but I thought I was, and I had been for years, I thought of myself as Superman at work. I can handle it. But at the end of the day, we all have more or less the same human body, and the human body and the human mind has its limits, and if you push beyond the limits, something's going to break. And it broke with me big time.
Okay, so Shane, tell us about yourself. What's your story, man?
Well, my story, a little different to Robert's. I actually had a spine injury, which caused me to need to get a surgery. And after my surgery, when I was able to ambulate and try to get back to a normal way of functioning, I became very depressed because I was far away from where I knew myself to be. At that time, I was still a teenager, and I became very depressed. So, I would not have known it was depression. I know I felt very sad and very out of it. So I sought help. So I went to different practitioners. I tried acupuncture. I just like a drowning man grabbing at a straw. I just tried to find some way to get help for myself. So eventually, I found myself going to the ward at the hospital in QEH to try to get some help, and I signed in myself as C4, and honestly it was a good decision because I didn't know how I would have handled it otherwise. But I was given medication which would have helped me to come out of the depression, and it did help, but then it reached a point where it went over the I went over from the low I was in, I went into like a high, and then subsequent to that I was diagnosed with a mood disorder. So for me in that early stage of it, I would have been younger and knowing that I went looking for help, and then now I come and get a diagnosis with something that I don't know about. I would have be a little rebellious there, if you understand where I'm coming from, and not have a lot of faith in the mental health system that we have here. But to be honest, as time went by and I got more mature in the diagnosis and like Ran, I would know Ran and stuff like that. He would have interacted with me at the hospital and stuff. I was able to reach a point where I decided that, you know what, it's not what I diagnosed with, it's how I function. So I wanted to come to show that even though you have a psychiatric diagnosis, you could still function normally, and it's not what you're diagnosed with, but how you function. So that's just about it for me. I just want to be an advocate for people to know that even if somebody did not tell you, because it's their story to tell, but you should be able to see a person and not even know that they got illness, because it's not that prevalent for everybody to. It's not a. What's the word that we use?
I think that was the right word, you know.
Right. It's not that prevalent for everybody to see. So, yeah, that's it for me. That's basically my story.
Well, I mean, as a teenager, and you had the wherewithal to say, man, that something is not right, I think I should go and seek some sort of medical help. I mean, teenagers don't do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? You sad and depressed, you go and drink some rum or smoke some weed or something like that. Something stupid at that age, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But, Mr. Ryan, tell me about you in all this process of mental health.
Well, thanks for that question, Fabian. You're looking at somebody that has been 23, 24 years in the public system and dealing with mental health care in Barbados. And really and truly, I've had a front row seat as an individual and as a professional in seeing and witnessing persons accessing services at the psychiatric hospital. And what I can say is that everybody got a story to tell. And everybody has a story that is buried deep within, and these are the words of Maya Angelou that they want to share. And it's that story that sometimes is not understood largely by society that kind of permeates itself as stigma, because society has these societal norms that they put in place to determine what is normal. Largely culturally, we focus on what we see, those physical parameters of illness. We heard it in the previous two stories. Robert said that persons were upset if you have a broken leg. You can see that, I can understand that, it's justifiable, it's validated. But then in Shane's story, his was more of an emotional pain. There's no physical markers really for emotional pain, except for when that emotion overrides and becomes in society known. Like if all of us here will get angry at some point in time, but you only know if I'm angry if I take this bottle and throw it at somebody or throw it in the ground or break up a table. So unless I'm comfortable and have a safe space to say, well, I'm not okay, then, and it's not accepted, it's not understood by everybody, this is where the emergence of discrimination and the perpetuation of judgment with the lack of compassion and understanding raises its ugly head. And for what I'm speaking about is that of stigma, which is pervasively the large barrier that really inhibits persons accessing mental health care. And I just want to agitate that the more we can speak about what we are experiencing, whether it's in emotions, whether it's about our finances, we just need to see health as health and not mental health and social health and gynae health. If you're going to present yourself at a doctor to get your health checked, it needs to be all dimensions of self. But we only largely focus on those physical parameters. And I'm saying that mental health is health, in short.
The psychiatric hospital has a saying, check your bias, and we all have our biases, don't we?
Definitely. And it's a very timely led campaign that was developed last year. It was launched of March 11th of 2024. And basically it's about embracing mental health and about breaking the stigma and putting your thoughts on the jury stand and ask a particular question. Is my perspective the entire story, or do I need to check my bias? And bias can be implicit or it can be explicit. And a lot of times implicit bias, because of the unknown and unconscious realm from which it emerges, it doesn't mean that it doesn't cause harm. Because like society-wise, the guy, the Indian persons that come to our house that we call coolie men, that's derogatory to their culture.
Yes.
But socially and accepted in Barbados, because despite we don't mean it in any harm way, it still go against their cultural norms, their cultural acceptance. But you still cause harm, because that's not. If I call Fabian and other other name than what he wished to be referred to as, I have offended you. So we need to understand then that language matters and that words matter, and how we say things actually creates curated images of what we perceive mental health and mental illness to be. The other thing is that we almost interchangeably use mental health and mental illness as one of the same term. And they have two separate words that describe different states of self, illness and health, which actually mental health and health in general exist in a continuum, where you're going to have different highs and lows, depends on situations, depending on your circumstances, depending on your finances, depending on your environment, your intellectual ability. You're going to actually have different understandings of what health is. And I just want persons to understand that 100 out of 100 is the same technically as 20 out of 20 as a percentage. So even if you show up today and all you have to give today is 20, as opposed to the 100 that you had yesterday, you're still giving 100% of yourself in your current moment.
Correct. With that said, Robert, how was it for you showing up to work and feeling the feelings that you were feeling and didn't know what it is you were dealing with?
It became increasingly difficult. I think I was always used to working with a certain amount of stress, but the stress increased, and but I didn't want to let on to my then wife, friends, employer. I didn't want to show weakness, and so I just kind of like sucked it up and thought I could just get through
as
it.
men, yeah, we push through. Doesn't matter, you know. We got a job to do. We set a task.
Man up.
Correct.
What a terrible expression.
Isn't it interesting how we always think, we're always thinking about what others would think too? That's natural, isn't it, though?
Yeah. Instead of thinking what's best for me,
yes,
what do
we
I
think
need?
about what other people
what would so-and-so
would
think? Or what would so-and-so say?
I think that stems from, again, stigma. Because if mainstream society is stating this is what norms should be, and I feel contra to what society expectations are, then I don't want to be different. Especially because it puts me on the stand. I don't want to be in the stand. I want to blend in and be like how everybody else is. The dangers with that is that it means that I'm suffering in silence. Because just trying to fit in, I'm not comfortable, and there's no safe space created to say I'm different or that I'm not okay, because then it will lead to ridicule, somebody laughing at me, somebody actually highlighting my differences in terms of vulnerability as opposed to my collective differences in terms of strengths. So I become the weak one, and mental health then being perceived, or mental illness being perceived as a sign of weakness, as opposed to their strength and being vulnerable and actually being truly honest to myself and present myself in a way in society that I can say, okay, yeah, I'm different, but this is me.
Yeah, but interesting enough, the difference is what took Shane to the hospital to get help. You know, he realized this isn't it. Everybody's not like this. Speak about that, Shane, just about being different and thinking about where you wanted to be and where you weren't, and how that affected you.
All right. Okay. One thing I always used to tell me, I will always tell myself, I can't believe a prediction that does not empower me. So, for instance, I can't come and well, okay, you can't do X, you can't do Y, you can't do Z. If I believe I could do it, then I should be able to do it. Once I set a plan, set my goal, work the plan, I execute, I should be fine. When I first found myself in the situation where I had to deal with my diagnosis, I was clueless as to any way as how to deal with it. So at the time, I would have been when I started, it was at Polytechnic, but then I went to university after. So I would find myself going in the social sciences department and going and looking at the coursework that students would have done. Like when I had assignments about different disorders and stuff like that, and the ones that had the highest grades, I would just sit down, read through them, and I would get a kind of synopsis as to how this thing works. So as I try to become more aware, I started listening to like a lot more motivational stuff. So like I would read books with like Les Brown and Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill and Earl Nightingale, and a lot of YouTube videos about motivation and that kind of stuff. But in terms of going and looking for help, I think that the truth is, if you don't have a strong support group, you might not find yourself being able to do that. Because I have my friends that I could run it by and say, well, like, honestly, well, I don't like how I feel or whatever, and I think I need to get some help or whatever. And I, as you know, heard me say, but I try the different places and going to different people and what's not. But I think the most salient thing is that everybody might not be able to afford to go for help. Everybody might, in terms of like, I mean, saying as simple as, a girl told me out there yesterday, she was told, man, go to the beach and get to relax and take a little break. But she said to find the $7 just for bus fare, just to get to the beach. Because it's how she's struggling with bills and everything. Now she find out that it's her last week at work. They got so many factors that's come into play before you even think about even approaching a healthcare facility about going for help. And it's a scary place to be because of the unknown. It's like you don't know what can be the end result. And most people figure, well, once you go dealing with psychiatry, anything to do with psyche or C4 or anything is a madman. So people just view as, okay, you don't got to have a diagnosis. Once you receive any kind of treatment and people know that, it's like, oh, he mad, she mad, she crazy, he crazy. It's just like a buzzword that people will use, which is not fair. So I think another thing too that's happened is that people are not educated to the point where they understand mental illness. So there's got a lot of in season things. You hear people say, well, oh my OCD acting up, or this body so bipolar, and then in that sermon we hear people saying that is this body's a narcissist. No, is that you're gaslighting. So it's be like so many different things that's been going on when it comes to mental health. Like it's not like a one-off topic you could have. I could talk and go it would be going on different tangents like discussing it, but I don't know, I guess like with Rand, since he would be more trained in dealing with patients or clients that might be exposed to failing mental health, and then Robert, that would have had a different experience where his was work related and he didn't go for help. I guess I might be the person showing that it's very important to get that help.
You're a unicorn.
As soon as possible. I already say unicorn. I think they got other people out there that probably do it too that we might not know of. But at the same time, you gotta go for the help. If the longer you take to go and get help, the harder it's gonna be for you, and the longer the journey is gonna be. So as soon as you realize that you're not gonna fall on and get a deep gash on your hand and not go to your hospital and get it treated, you're gonna step on a nail and not gonna get a tetanus shot. So if you start to feel like something just don't feel right, even though it's in the mind, you find some place that could deal with that.
Nah, I don't think so, because Robert said it, and he is old school, right? And we are not brought up in society to say, hey, we dealing with stuff like that. We were brought up not to cry, not to hold hands. We weren't told we were loved. My daddy didn't tell me these things, and that is how we move through life. You got to do it. You're the man of the house. You are supposed to provide and protect.
Socially conditioned.
Yeah, so we ain't focusing on our mental health. We focusing on the goals that we were supposed to achieve and why we are falling short of those goals. And it has nothing to do with either tired today. Tired what? We got things to do, right? But even in saying all of that, Ryan, there's a stigma on mental institutions, especially drinkings. You know what I mean? What are we as a nation doing to help put that aside so people don't have that fear of like Shane asking for help when they need it, or going down there and say, hey, something is wrong, I need somebody to help me?
Well, definitely, and that's a very good question, because quite recently we've been having several discussions with the minister in the state and Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Honorable Davidson Ishmael, and we've been discussing of how we can change the look and the field of the psychiatric hospital. And predating this conversation, the hospital was established 1893. It was a plantation, Jenkinsville, and it stretched from where it's currently at all the way down to Spring Garden Highway. And over subsequent decades, it got developed. That's where we know as Deacon Farm and so on. So it went through its evolution to where it's currently at. We've modernized some buildings, but yet stigma still pervasively continues. It pervades what our efforts are in terms of changing the lips and the tongues, the understanding of persons with what mental health versus what mental illness is. Mental health is on the continuum. So your illness on one side and health is on one side. So health and illness can be the same. But I think the word mental and mental health and mental illness alone has its own share of fair weight of stigma itself, because I don't think nobody hears anything else after they hear mental.
Correct.
So I've had conversations with persons, ordinary persons in society, when I've done community outreach activities, and I can speak to you about mental health. Oh, I don't have any mental health. That would be the direct response. And the response should be, yeah, you don't have a mental illness, but everybody has mental health. And mental health is affected by different things.
Mental health is what you want.
And mental health is what you want, actually, to be the gold stone. But going back to what you asked about changing the look and feel, we have modernized buildings. A lot of persons don't know about the services that are rendered. Persons just perceive that from the time you reach the gates of the psychiatric hospital, that one, you have to be restrained and brought in. Because years ago, we used to have a mental health van that we would go and we would bring persons in. And of course, anybody putting you in a mental health van, they ain't going exactly in the van cooperatively. So there's going to be some kind of restraining process involved. And the other thing is that persons believe that all services would render ultimately a medication and stuff like that. And beyond medication, we won't have a conversation. We don't get to medication just like that. Actually, medication in our rubric is the last resortment that we go to. There's a place for it, but it's not the first thing that we start to. We have social services. We have psychological services, we have drug rehabilitation services, we have occupational therapy services, we have recreational therapy services, we have community services, we have our emergency services. So there are different types of services that we can address persons' needs on an individual basis. So case in point, if I had to use an example, 5 of us here at this conversation, we can all have a diagnosis, God forbid, of depression. Mine can be relationship based. Shane's can be financially based. Robert's can be that he just lost a loved one. Yours could be that your job is giving you some pressures and you're not managing it. And Shayla's own could be that her husband just migrated and now she's left to care for 2 kids as opposed to having that support partner. So here is you have the same diagnosis, but 5 different routes of how persons get to that diagnosis. So me that basically have I may need medication, finances here, Shane may just require somebody to make him financially literate. Robert may require grievance counseling and maybe some medication to help him sleep because he's so preoccupied with the loss of that loved one. Fabian, you may need support in your workplace where there's a mental health committee or health awareness committee where a boss can say, you know what, let's just give you a vacation, let's take a break, create a pause, support you. And Shayla may just require that, you know what, yeah, she was managing with her husband in place, but now he's gone overseas to probably do something with work or whatever. She may just need assistance to help out with the kids every morning. So why would I need to give her medication? Why would I need to give you medication when there are other ways to manage the stressor, what is undercurrent? But we just focus on the diagnosis and just believe that medication is required. That is untrue.
Are any of your services available online? Because I'm just wondering, we were talking about stigma, we were talking about feeling uncomfortable with certain things. Yeah. Are any of them offered online that you don't necessarily have to go in person? Or
well, we're striving, and that's a good question. We're striving to actually get that done. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has just instituted Lifeline Barbados 536-4500. On social media, you can follow us at Psyche Hospital, PSYCHI, and daily we would, upload different bite-sized, palatable information about what you can do and how you can manage different things in your life, different aspects of your life. The other thing is that persons don't utilize some of the resources. Maybe they're not well known, but in every polyclinic across the island, there's a mental health clinic. that you can access, whether it's St. Scott, whether it's Echo Cochrane, Maurice Bayer, Randall Phillips, whichever polyclinic is in your catchment area, there is a mental health clinic that is run on specific days. It's not true composed for the entire week, but there are mental health clinics there. And we are going to be recently or soon launching our mental health directory. We've taken the time with the Mental Health Commission and Dr. Sue to collate all the private and public mental health facilities and institutions that render mental health care and put them into one neat package that you can make an informed decision about where to access mental health care. It doesn't have to be necessarily the psychiatric hospital, but we do encourage that if you recognize that you're kind of out of sorts and things aren't quite right with yourself, that you seek out help wherever that may be. It could be private, it could be public.
And speaking of online, I know that Shane has an Instagram page that he's going to tell us about.
They got an Instagram page on a WhatsApp group, WhatsApp mental health group they started, and to get more reach, I started a IG page is beyond beautiful _minds 246, and that was just to help me provide content for persons that can help balance out things that they might think about every day, with the job and stuff like that. The only question they have I want to ask for one question though. The lifeline is Lifeline Barbados. The number for that is 535 or 536?
536.
536, okay. Because I tried calling the number last night just to see if it was working. I use that number in my WhatsApp group in terms of if anybody really, really needed help. Because the group consists of persons that mostly have psychiatric diagnosis. And to be honest, I was saying probably no, but 100% of the group is only women. Because the guys that join, you see, this person has left the group, that person has left the group.
That is very telling.
And the men don't interact in the group. So the ladies will try to post stuff. I post stuff in it too, to be inspirational, thought provoking, that kind of stuff. And the women will interact in the group and tell how the day went and encourage one another, if they had a bad day and stuff like that. But the men that come to the group leave. They don't try to even things that people might suggest within that group to try. They don't do it. It's so hard because as Ryan would have said, is Ryan? Somebody said that no, it was Robert when he said that you accustomed being the breadwinner and then kind of things the man that's supposed to be manly, so men don't cry and men don't experience these things, so you gotta be strong and that kind of thing, which is far from the truth. It takes more strength to go and look for help than it takes to ball up in a shell and just remain there suffering. And another thing that I realized too is that as I go around, I would see persons where I might know a way to do it. You see, I don't know if you ever see some people that got cuts to start cutting. I would see mostly women do it. So I would ask, so when I see it and I see their hand, it's not my business, but I might say, I know why you do that, or whatever. And then they're saying they're experiencing a mental pain that's so strong they want to feel it. Physically. They want to, so then physically cut. And till they got scars right to the arm, some might get tattoos to cover it over and whatnot. So they got a lot of people that out there that honestly struggling. They are struggling to keep it together. I remember you got your mental health and you got people diagnosed with mental illness, but the people that diagnosed with mental illnesses still got to deal with the mental health because they got bills to pay, people's rent, got the mortgage, they got children, families. So without getting the necessary support, that's why I hope that the same hotline, I don't know how it works. Because they try calling, as they say, they didn't get try call, but I probably call the wrong number. Because they think, nothing what I call, I just very frank, because they have 535-4500, but it's 536.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, so it was just change our name in my group to know that it is 536-4500. But honestly, I want to ask Robert something too. When you saying the word that you started to experience burnout, because last year I started to feel like it was experiencing something like that, whereas I was feeling real overwhelmed. It was not because of work though, it was because of other things I was dealing with at the time, but you still had to work.
Yeah.
What was your breaking point, or what made you decide that, I have to go and get help for it? You had an intervention, somebody went on your behalf, or you went?
Yeah. I mean, I got to the point where I couldn't really decide anything for myself anymore. And it was my wife at the time. She decided for me. She said, you've got to go she called a psychiatrist. I was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. So, in a sense, I never got to the point of making the decision. That decision was made for me because I didn't deal with things early enough.
So,
And I think what you were saying is right, that the man being the breadwinner has to be, or thinks he has to be strong, outwardly appear strong at all times, regardless of what he's feeling. But also, men tend to store up a lot of stuff, stress and other things, because men, your WhatsApp group being the perfect example, men are not good at talking, period, compared to women. And you get onto a subject like this, and men who are not good at talking become even worse at talking.
So, Robert, what role did the community and conversation play in your road to recovery?
My road to recovery was very hit and miss. One of the jobs I wouldn't like to have is being a psychiatrist, because when it comes to medication, which I did need, there isn't one size fits all. And, you name the medication, I was put on it. No, this one isn't working. And so a psychiatrist can prescribe certain medication for depression to patient A and have a good response. Patient B, nothing. Okay, let's find something else. And finally, we hit on the right combination of therapy and medication, and I started to, it's almost like a fog lifting, started to come up. My mood started to improve. But same as you, really. With these things, it's quite easy to overshoot.
Yeah, it's overshoot.
Because I wasn't responding, so the dosage was put up and up and up and up, and then suddenly I didn't get back to where I needed to get to. I got back to where I needed to get and beyond.
Right.
And then I became manic.
Yeah.
Like you said, you did as well. Yeah.
Well, I have a family member, and they did the cutting, and they attempted suicide not once but twice, right? And all the things you guys are saying, or all the things they're currently saying, one medication makes them feel like a slug, they can't get out the bed.
Yeah.
And we are yelling, yo, you got to get up and go exercise. And they're saying, I can't. And we're like, get medication. Next medication, they're manic. Everything, it's hyper, they're yelling, they're screaming, they want to run, they want to dance, and then they crash. And me, I have no understanding. I have love, but I have no understanding of what I can do to help. Man, I went as far, I got the DM5, I'm looking at everything like, do they have this? Yeah, they got this. It was like in every diagnosis, there could have been psychotic, narcissistic, bipolar. Everything that they were doing was in this book.
It
And
could
I'm
be
like,
really
yo,
overwhelming.
you need help. Go and get some help, please. Because then after the suicide attempts, it was like I was talking to a psychiatrist. They had the right words. They said the right things. And I'm like, well, you don't talk like this. You sound like a doctor. But they had the words, I'm sorry. I was really overwhelmed, and I'm not finding myself. The medication is working. And then I would be like, nah, that ain't you talking to me, So what are the signs that we need to look out for? Any telling signs?
I would say, so if you have someone close to you, family member, friend, work colleague, you know how they are, you know their personality, you know their normal behavior. So I would say a telling sign is, are they doing something differently? Have they started to behave differently? And everyone has an off day, at work or at home or whatever. But if it goes on for days and weeks, and this person isn't, literally the saying goes, this person isn't himself or herself, that's a sign that something's going on inside and things are not good.
Robert, I have two burning questions for you. Oh, but Shane, you want to say something, did you?
What I wanted to ask Robert again, 'cause I was very interested in the workplace scenario, right? Because I wanted to know, like, where I work, we have an employee assistance program, which allows you to, you could seek counseling if you need counseling, or even financial assistance. They did at one point counseling for emotions, finances, grief, loss, that kind of stuff. And also we have something flex PTO, where you could get paid time off, where you talk to your manager and say you need 10 days for whatever reason, and they agree upon it, you would be able to get that 10 days home or whatever. You had anything like
That's
that
great.
work? Like
No.
you never had a mental health days, nothing like that? Cause we used to get 5 mental health days, and then they stopped down and then incorporate this flex PTO, which is like 365 days in a year. You could take the days once you liaise with your manager, and it could be more than the 10 days. It could be any amount of days. It's not limitless, but it's unlimited, but it's not limitless.
That is excellent. And what we need in terms of raising awareness is not just the raising awareness in society and individuals, but a raising awareness with employers. You know, employers, if someone works for you, you know, you have a responsibility to them in terms of their well-being. And if they're struggling at work, one, it's not good for the bottom line because they're not going to be as productive. And unless you help them by like taking some pressure off, giving them a bit of time, a bit of space, whatever, you're going to have a bigger problem, because things are going to get worse, and they're going to need even more time off not being productive. So it's in employers, not just moral imperative, but it's in their best interest from a profitability point of view to support their employees and help deal with things early, because work is a stressful place. You know, results are expected, and people work hard, and you can't, as I think we were saying earlier, you can't separate work from other stuff that's going on in people's lives. If they've lost someone, they have a family bereavement, or they've had a breakup, or whatever, you can't just say, well, I'm at work now, so that doesn't affect me. It's still with you. So it's going to impact how you are at work, and that needs to be recognized.
Well, because we through work with the senior employee assistance program, I was able to get therapy with my psychologist, Shadi Watson. Then the companies pay for that, and you could see the therapist. According to True Network Services, you'll be able to see a therapist, and she did a lot of work, especially during COVID. We really started talking to her through COVID over the computer, like through Zoom call, through Google Meets. But then also, I was wondering if you ever got any, because through the psychiatric hospital.
But what you're describing, would you say that's quite a rare thing?
Yeah, it's actually quite rare, and there's no parity to that. So beyond, I agree with Robert, beyond the awareness and the education, that we need to inspire call for actions, and we need to get things documented in legislation that really supports, because what Shane experienced is quite nuanced to his employer, really, but if he goes to 10 different other employers, he may not get that same support.
You got that right.
Exactly, because we know that every sick day we call in is not necessarily a sick day. There's something that we need to go to the beach and get a pina colada, but the only facility to really manage that is to call in and say, yeah, I need a sick day. Right. But we need to be able to confidently call and say, I need a mental health day as well. And at the current moment, you would be looked at quite absurdly, like, what are you talking about? That doesn't exist. What do you mean a mental health day? Try and get your backside in work, because we got things to do, and as Robert said, we got bottom and profits. But it needs to be supportive to the point that employees need to be understood that they're also a father, they're a mother, they're a brother, they're going to be somebody's child, they're going to go out alien elderly person in the home, and they should be able to take their whole self to work. Culturally, I grew up in the work culture where you were told, leave your problems at the gate, don't bring them in here. We are saying in 2024, 2025, bring your whole self to work. Let's deal with you as an entire being. You don't go to work, like Robert said, and forget automatically that somebody may just die upon your return home. You could expect a call any moment from the hospital saying, thing is no longer. These things will affect you. It will affect productivity. So when businesses, institutions are making their financial statements, I think they need a paragraph to really address what's the turnover rates of employees, what was the failure rate and the unpunctuality rates of employees, and really address how employees fared at the end of a quarter or a financial year, not just how many profits you made, because what about the person? Do you really value them as well?
For this to happen, we have to be truly vulnerable with ourselves, though. And I think this is something that Robert went through. And I realized that even though this was a personal experience, somehow it moved you to go into advocacy. So tell me about that, going from, realizing that this is something that you were experiencing to then deciding, okay, I want to move this into advocacy, because you could have just left it,
I think if I hadn't struggled as much or for as long, maybe I wouldn't have gone into advocacy. Maybe I wouldn't be sufficiently motivated. But it was 6 years, it was quite a big chunk of my life. And it changed my life, because I tried to go back to work, but I was literally kind of limping along, never got my mojo back. It was just a struggle, and I stopped working much earlier than I otherwise would have done. And it had an effect on my marriage and other relationships, my having been mentally ill. It kind of like, it really changed my life. Everything, all the things I took for granted as being part of my life, they just weren't there anymore. Wasn't working. I was no longer with my wife. And
big changes.
So I thought, wow, this is quite a big thing that's had a big impact on me and a big effect on me. And it isn't just me. There are a lot of people statistically. I think it's something like 1 in 4 people will struggle with their mental health at some point in their lives, which is the same statistics as 1 in 4 people will have a cancer diagnosis of one type or another in their lives. Cancer gets a lot of funding, gets a lot of awareness, a lot of publicity. Mental health statistically, mental illness statistically is just as likely to happen as cancer, but it's way behind. And I just want to do whatever I can and talk about mental health and mental illness as much as possible to as many people as possible to help raise awareness. And the more you talk about anything, that helps to reduce the stigma, because it becomes more normalized.
Do you have a platform or anything like that you share?
No, most of the work I do here with Barbados, it's with Ryan at the psychiatric hospital. I did a talk there for Mental Health Awareness Day last October. That's on the hospital's YouTube channel, I think.
Yes,
is it still?
That's right.
Yeah, that 10th of October last year. Anything I do with Ryan or anywhere else, I also in schools with the Ministry of Education as well. I tend to post on my Instagram. On my Instagram page. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so very much. This was enlightening. We touched on so many things. We talked about the struggles that men going through and expressing themselves. We talked about vulnerability, wellness in the workplace. I feel like we have so much to think about.
So much more to talk about as well.
One more thing to ask. Last thing. Occupational therapy or stuff like that, you would have experienced any of that? Because through the hospital, I was able to get to see the Knox Rochester to do occupational therapy, and that have a lot learning about self-regulation and stuff like that. And then the emotional intelligence courses with Tony Walton, I would have done that course twice. So I found that helped a lot. Emotional intelligence helped a lot in learning how to deal with your own mental health, honestly. And I think that's something that should be started from very young, and so not as a topic, but as a subject in schools for people to understand. Because an emotion is a feeling, and feelings are messages. And when you can pinpoint, sometimes you might ask some person, how you feeling? They say, my day was, and they start to tell you about the day, but they can't pinpoint what the feeling, they don't be able to tell you, but I felt this particular way. So I would just like to say that I think that emotional intelligence is something that I would like to see more involved in these schools and in the school system from a young age. So once people get that awareness coming up in life, then it's easier to deal with the little struggles that you have. Because just be challenges. You just go make stepping stones or the stumbling blocks that you going butt in life.
Listen, Shane. I applaud everything you're saying, but you see, emotional intelligence, you're dealing with Bajans. Half of us don't even know what that is. And that's just the truth. How are they going to start it in school?
Start somewhere.
They got several people. Well,
emotional intelligence really is a topic that you have to learn about. And you only learn about it when you encounter things that you guys have encountered and using the tools. That's a tool. People are not talking in their houses about, hey son, you have to be emotionally intelligent.
Well, as you go through life, you will go through different scenarios that will show you where you have to turn up with emotional intelligence.
If you started from early enough, you don't think that it could reach a point where how in school?
Why are we going to bring a psychologist into school to speak to children?
You don't need a psychologist to teach. But then why then wait to when something happen in the school to go bring a whole team of psychologists to counsel students because of something negative that would have happened in the school? Because
that's how we are as a society.
We
are not proactive. But it is another topic.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So on that note, I want to thank you, Ryan. I want to thank you, Shane. I want to thank you, Robert.
Thank you for being here.
We really appreciate you coming and giving of yourselves and of your time and sharing your experiences, because I know it can't be easy. It can't be easy telling people about something that makes you so vulnerable to Bajans. You know?
Yeah.
And we want to thank you guys.
We do it to set an example, to show people that it's okay to talk about it.
Definitely.
So final thoughts in 30 seconds, guys?
Well, I would just sum it up as quickly that mental health is health. I'm a huge advocate for that. And their mental well-being should be equally as important to individuals as their physical health. And that they should pursue things about that makes them mentally well and continue to that. And let's have this conversation continued so that we can move the shift and the focus of mental health being tabooed to more a table conversation, like a round table such as this as well. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. I would say don't be afraid to reach out. It takes a lot more courage to come out and try to get help for yourself rather than to suffer in silence. And help is out there. Treatment is there. And you can live a normal life, whether you're diagnosed with a mental illness or not, a psychiatric illness or not. And just for the persons that are supporters of the people who do suffer with these things, try to make yourself more aware of what you're dealing with so that you could be better able to assist the person that is suffering with the illness. Because you don't have to suffer, you can live. But by extension, you're only as good as the set of people that you would be around, and you just gotta try your best to focus, be self-aware as the individual who is experiencing the illness or rather health challenge, and just do your best to be healthy.
I would just say my message to everyone really is it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to talk about it.
Thank you so much. Yes, very important indeed.
On that note, we'd like to thank everyone for coming. So over to Sheila.
Thanks for listening to Just a Conversation. If this episode made you think, smile, or even pause for a second, don't forget to follow the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're tuning in. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just search GIS Barbados. Every follow, share, or message brings more voices to the table. Until next time, keep the conversation going.